Hello and welcome to City Beat. We are your central source of news and information for the city of Rocky Mount, and I'm your host, Tamika Keenan Norman. Today's show is all about disaster recovery efforts following Hurricane Matthew. And joining us, we're going to have Donnie Daniels from the City of Rocky Mount Fire Department and also a representative from the U.S. Small Business Administration to talk about the Disaster Recovery Center and also some assistance that you still might need. So even if you weren't displaced as a result of the storm, this is still good information to know. So please stay tuned, share this show with your friends as well. More of City Beat is coming up next.
If you know that last year over 100,000 folks saw a play, attended a concert, or visited a museum in Nash and Edgecombe counties, give yourself a round of applause.
Hello and welcome to City Beat. I'm Tamika Keenan Norman, and this show today we're focusing on disaster recovery efforts following Hurricane Matthew. And joining me right now, I've got Donnie Daniels. He's got the 411 on everything. He's Division Chief of Life Safety and Training, as well as Emergency Management Coordinator for the City of Rocky Mount. And welcome, Donnie. This is your first time on City Beat.
I believe it is.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. Did I get your title right? Because it's so long.
That's correct.
Okay.
Division Chief of Life Safety and Training.
Yes. Tell me a little bit about what that entails.
Well, I've been in that role for about a year now. That Division Chief of Life Safety and Training. In our division, we have the Fire Marshal's Office, which pretty much covers the code enforcement, permitting, and fire investigations, as well as the training section, which handles all of the hiring and recruitment and training for our personnel and public education. Along with those responsibilities, I serve in the role of Emergency Management Coordinator for the city, which, as you can imagine, has been a full-time responsibility over the last few weeks since the storm.
So I imagine you performed a lot of hours and were involved in so many different capacities during the storm.
Yes, ma'am, most definitely.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about the fire department and how many rescues you all performed during Matthew. What type of assistance you all received as well?
Well, we were very busy during the hurricane, as you can imagine. We had well over 400 rescues that took place. A lot of those initially were covered by our engine companies, who were rescuing stranded motorists that were stranded, in intersection and flooded streets. Fortunately, they have all been, trained as far as swift water awareness, and they have PFDs and throw bags. Something we really didn't have during Hurricane Floyd, but we learned from that. So a good percentage of those initial rescues were done by our engine companies and ladder companies and our rescue companies in the city. As the storm progressed and the rain picked up and we started, the creeks just started becoming overwhelmed, we started losing access to our neighborhoods and people became stranded, and that was when we really had to utilize our swiftwater rescue team, which we also did not have during Hurricane Floyd. We have a 20-member team that is a state resource through North Carolina Emergency Management, and we were fortunate enough to have them pre-assigned, so we had some here, and then we brought the team in pretty quick once the storm started picking up. They were able to take their boat teams, the swiftwater rescue team, and start accessing the neighborhoods we were losing and evacuating people that were stranded in their homes. And as the storm escalated and the impact started spreading throughout eastern North Carolina, we realized how significant an event it was going to be. And at that point, we started getting requests for our swiftwater rescue team to assist other jurisdictions. We received a call. We had already received several high-risk rescues in our city, and we had a call from Edgecombe County. There was a young lady that her vehicle was swept off the road on Colonial Road. They had rescue teams in place, but they could not reach her. I can't recall if she was stranded in a tree or still in her vehicle. I believe she was in a tree at that point. You may have seen this is the same rescue that the Princeville Fire Chief was involved in. And when they initially called, all of our teams were heavily involved in rescues here in the city. And as soon as we could free one up, we were able to send them to Edgecombe County. And fortunately, our team was able to get there, a boat team, and they were able to save her, and everyone was able to come out of that. And before they even were back in the city, we had to divert them to Bynum Farm Road near Pine Tops. We had received a request to send some personnel there. They had over 200 people that were trapped in a community that was being overcome by floodwaters, which was a very dangerous situation. So we sent our CERT team there. We sent another boat team to assist them. And they spent a good part of the evening making several rescues in that area before coming back to the city. And as the night, kind of progressed, and the rescues seemed to continue to pick up because at that point the river started to rise as well. So we did rescues throughout the night. The next morning we requested resources from the state early on as far as high clearance vehicles from the National Guard and additional swiftwater rescue teams, because we knew that our resources would be overtaxed. But unfortunately, throughout the state, rescues were taking place, and the resources were in short supply. So I think that's one of the disadvantages. We try to pre-deploy rescue resources ahead of time, and the state does a very good job of doing that. But as the forecast changes and the impact changes, then sometimes you have those teams that may be out of place, and it takes a while to get them here. So the next day, we were still doing rescues, and more and more neighborhoods started to become affected, and people were, they were threatened by the rising water. So our swiftwater team was still, going out into the different neighborhoods. We were fortunate to get some assistance through the county. Some of the local fire departments that were not impacted, Cooper's Fire Department, Momire from Nash County, Stony Creek Fire and Rescue here in Rocky Mount, they all had boats and boat teams that we paired them up with our personnel, including some of our operations personnel, and they were able to get everyone out of the neighborhoods. I know Bunn Farm, they spent nearly the entire day evacuating the Bunn Farm neighborhood along with Stony Creek. We did get support through the National Guard with 2 Humvee units that helped us initially to reach everyone. That second evening, our swiftwater rescue team, they had been performing rescues about 36 hours straight. We were concerned about their safety because they had not stopped, but we tried to get them to stand down, but every time they would get to a point they could stop, we would get another call that we would have to deploy them. So fortunately, the second night, we were able to get some high clearance vehicles from the National Guard that were assisting, us be able to reach people in the neighborhoods and getting them evacuated, and as well as a team from Chapel Hill Fire Department, the Swiftwater Rescue Team came in, and that was the first break that our personnel were able to get. So it was a long 2 to 3 day period. It was almost like reliving Hurricane Floyd again. I will add, because I certainly don't want to leave them out, a big component for us this time was Tar River Transit. We had reached out to them early on because we knew that once we were able to access our citizens in these neighborhoods that needed to be evacuated, we had to get them transported to the shelter. And they came in, their drivers volunteered to come in, and they ran routes back and forth to the shelters as they started to open to get our citizens to a safer place in the city or to a shelter if needed. So we very proud of our personnel. We learned a lot from Hurricane Floyd. I think we were better prepared, but I think that the assistance came in handy, and we are, just as we did during Hurricane Floyd, we'll evaluate, what went well and what we can do to be better prepared in the future for the next storm.
Great idea to implement all that you did, that Swiftwater Rescue Team. And let me say thank you, to the entire fire department for all that you did. 500 rescues, that's a lot. Yeah, so great job.
Thank you.
I'm sure you've received a lot of compliments, but thank you so much.
Well, we were very blessed, and I think having the right equipment, the right training, the right plans in place, it was beneficial. The storm was a little different than Hurricane Floyd, but if you recall, we lost, I believe, 35 people in Nash, Edgecombe, and Rocky Mount during that flood, and to my knowledge, at this point, we did not have any fatalities in Nash, Edgecombe, or the city of Rocky Mount during the storm. So.
Okay. Well, tell me a little bit about, because I know you worked with our planning department as well, kind of getting numbers, and they went out, they did windshield surveys, determined if homes were inhabitable or not. Yes. How many homes and businesses were damaged?
Based on the preliminary damage assessment, we figure over 360 homes were damaged. Roughly 125 of those were severely damaged. That's including, I guess, another 30 to 40 businesses that were impacted or damaged. A lot of those, significant damage. So it very, costly storm as far as damage, but and I'll tell you, this is something that we definitely need to bring up, because if you recall, or there's some discussion about the buyout, from the previous storm with Hurricane Floyd. That's very important to note, because there were, we had over 1,000 homes and businesses that were destroyed during Hurricane Floyd, and with the FEMA, with the hazard mitigation plan, we bought out, roughly 446, I believe, structures. And as I was discussing earlier, those 446 homes that were bought out and moved out of the flooded area, those would have been homes that we would have had to evacuate or perform rescues, and those would have been in the most dangerous portions of our city that were affected. So had we not, I guess, went through the buyout plan and the hazard mitigation process, this storm could have been very different as well. So.
And a good example of that, I guess, is because some of those buyout areas are parks now.
That's
and
right.
we see how flooded those areas are now.
Yes, ma'am. It was kind of, those of us that were here during Hurricane Floyd, we saw we were going to the same areas. Fortunately, some of those homes, a lot of those homes were not there now, so we didn't have to do those same rescues.
That's good. That's good. Tell me a little bit about some precautions that we can take in the future. I know our Public Works and Water Resources Department, they started collection, right after the storm. I think it was that Tuesday. But when you're dealing with those large items, what are some safety precautions that you can keep in mind?
I think as far as debris, I think obviously any disaster, whether it's from wind damage or tornadoes or even ice storms, sometimes can create significant damage. You always have to be careful for the known hazards, such as down power lines. They're always very dangerous, and you need to be cautious for those. Sometimes gas lines can be compromised, and we have a usually higher amount of gas leaks post-storm. The things that are a little different for a flood, and people don't realize that floodwaters are very hazardous. They're a danger to public health, because floodwaters contain pesticides, raw sewage, all sorts of chemicals. So anything that was impacted by floodwaters is really, a public health hazard to some degree. So, precautions from that standpoint, certainly you want to use protective clothing. You want to use gloves when you can, and if you do handle items that were in the flood, you want to make sure that you wash your hands well and kind of sanitize everything. So those are important. The mask, a particle mask, is you're in your homes. If your home was flooded and you're removing furniture or carpet, that's really not healthy to breathe a lot of that in. So I would recommend even the types at the hardware stores, just a particle mask to help with that. And other things that you have to be concerned about that people don't really think about are the snakes that when the river comes out of its banks, and you've got a lot of wildlife that's been displaced, and snakes can very easily end up in the homes that were flooded or businesses. And now something that we really haven't discussed in the past is mosquitoes. As long as we have warm weather, and the mosquito population will increase with the standing water, with the Zika virus, we have to make sure that you use insect repellent and just be cautious in those areas.
I think we were lucky this time. I was actually speaking with someone from our Public Works and Water Resources Department, Brenton Bent, and he said the mosquito problem wasn't as big as what he thought it would be after all this flooding.
And hopefully the weather will cooperate. As long as we stay away from the very humid weather, at this time of year, I think the mosquito population will hopefully not be as bad as it could be.
Could be. Yeah, I think I jumped ahead a little bit. One of the things that I did want to talk to you about as well, we do have a representative from the Disaster Recovery Center, which is at our Imperial Center, coming in just a few moments. But what's some important numbers that folks need to keep in mind if they still need assistance?
Well, there's the obviously the the FEMA assistance, the helpline. That is 1-800-621-3362. Or you can go online at disasterassistance.gov, or for the time being, they can go to our Disaster Recovery Center here at the Imperial Center. At this point, we're not sure how much longer they'll be open, but they're still open today, and hopefully within a week or two, they'll still be accepting. But you can go to disasterassistance.gov, the FEMA helpline that I just mentioned. The state has a line 211. and I've actually checked into it myself, and whether it's a need for food stamps or temporary housing or resources of where to turn to get assistance, if you'll dial 211, it's an automated system, and they will direct you to the resources that you need. And if all else fails, go to RockyMountFire.org and look under our information tab and disaster preparedness, and there are tons of links there to be able to direct you to get assistance.
Gotcha. Some organizations have helped people as well. I know our senior center, they were collecting items for the United Way
That's
Tar
correct.
River region. Do you know of any other organizations that have helped or are still providing assistance?
It's really, we were very blessed because we had such a tremendous support base from our faith-based organizations. I recall before the storm even moved out of the area, I came in after working the entire storm, and there was a gentleman from the Virginia Baptist Disaster Response Team that was waiting at my office door wanting to know where they could go to start helping. And that's been the case nearly the entire recovery process. And I hate to name names, but some of the larger ones that were helping, obviously Truth Tabernacle from Arlington Street, they were involved in some I guess feeding and caring for those that were displaced. Word Tabernacle has a tremendous recovery process that they're helping with. See, Inglewood Baptist Church, they were helping process a lot of the other relief organizations, the faith-based relief organizations that were coming in. So, and I mean, those were just the churches, and I hate just to identify those churches because there were a lot of other churches that were partnering with them to provide meals and some housing assistance, some cleaning supplies, volunteers that are going in these communities and helping the neighbors clean out their homes. So there was a lot of that going on. And of course, we always have the United Way, the American Red Cross. In fact, they have a call center that's set up, and I'll throw that number out there as well. It's 1-800-768-8048 to contact the Red Cross, 211. And also just for those that maybe want to volunteer, because there's still, the recovery process is a long process. There are still active groups that are working throughout our community. So many, I really can't name them right offhand, but I would recommend that you go to your local church and ask if there's a link there to be able to help. If not, the American Red Cross is always looking for volunteers, and I'm sure United Way can point people in the right direction. And the state also has a website. It's called ncvoad.org, ncvoad.org. And they will help coordinate volunteer efforts as well and direct them into areas where there's a need.
Okay, that sounds good. Last thing I want to talk about is, in the future, I like for people to know what the city does in events like this. And one of the things that we do that I was involved in as well is our Emergency Operations Center. We call it the EOC.
Yes, ma'am.
If you can explain to them what that center is and its significance to the community.
It's really a command center that was based from the city to handle large-scale events or incidents. I like to call it just a coordination of resources, and we were both in there together during the storm, and you could see how busy it is. What it is, it's a site that we have. We have a primary and a secondary site, a backup site in case it's affected. Once it's set up and opened, we have computer monitors that we monitor radar. This particular storm, we were monitoring flood inundation models. We monitor traffic as far as road closures. We have traffic cameras that we monitor. We have power outage maps that you saw, and we also have the our CAD, so we can track our resources of how many police officers are dispatched to calls and how many firefighters or fire apparatus are dispatched. So we can track our resources, but the benefit of having an emergency operations center once it's implemented is it pulls all of the different departments and the resources together. And as needs arise, we can coordinate that rather quickly. A good example was when the storms started really bearing down on our city. We started having road closures, and we needed barricades up. We needed to be able to work with law enforcement. One of the things and I failed to mention, in the height of the storm, with all of the rescues, we had 2 working structure fires that were going on with our firefighters, and so they went from water rescues to putting out fires in an apartment and a home, and then went right back to water rescues. But one of the things that we were able to do with the Emergency Operations Center is when there was a request to barricade a street, we could directly look right over to the street department representative and have them dispatch barricades to be set up. We're in direct communication with law enforcement to get police officers to an area to help secure a scene if needed. We always know, we try to monitor the power outages, and with having someone from Energy Resources, they were able to actually let us know where those power outages are, because usually with the power outages we can look at an increase in emergency service calls for down power lines or for fire alarm activations or burglar alarms. So it's just good to have those resources in there. It's good to have the city manager's office representative because they're the decision makers. And a good example is as we were getting forecast updates and we knew the impact was going to be a little different, you were in there with public affairs, and if you recall, what we did is we pulled that information together to feed it to you to establish a press release. And then Mayor Combs was in the Emergency Operations Center, and I think the three of us together worked through our Code Red notification system to get that information out to the public. So that's the beauty of an EOC, is that all the resources are there, we can work together, and so it was very beneficial of having it open. And it's not always needed. That's the thing that we need to understand, is that if it's for example, a fire, most of the fire resources are going to be handled with our department and through our incident command system. Our Energy Resources, they have their own operations center. If it's pretty much just a power outage event, they can handle that within their operations center. But anything that's involving multiple resources throughout the city and different departments, pulling them together into an emergency operations center is very helpful.
It was very helpful, and I'm glad you mentioned Code Red, because folks can sign up for that throughout the year.
That's right.
And it's very important to have during an emergency so you can receive notification in minutes. That was helpful for a lot of people. So they can visit our website, RockyMountNC.gov, and go to the fire department page to sign up for Code Red.
That's correct.
Yeah, Donnie, you've been very helpful. Anything else that you want to point out?
No, I think I would. I really need to get this out, because I think that as emergency managers, some of our concerns are complacency, that it's been a while since we've had a significant impact from a storm. So I think that this will be, the storm is fresh for everyone now, and so now the things that we missed this go round, within our families and our homes, whether it was our preparedness kits, some things that maybe we did this time, like driving through a flooded street. Hopefully the public and the community will learn and we'll do better in those areas. So we always encourage people, the state, we always say turn around, don't drown. And if we could have avoided so many of those water rescues where people were driving through streets that were flooded, it would have freed up our resources to handle other things. So we always encourage the community and the public not to drive through flooded streets. And in closing, I guess I would the storm takes a pretty hard hit on us, but the recovery process can be pretty stressful as well, because the recovery process is long term, and it takes a while. And I guess I would encourage our community and the public to just have some patience. We've been very fortunate. I know from emergency management, we've been able to work very closely with FEMA and with the Nash and Edgecombe County Emergency Management offices to get resources here. The city's leadership has put together a public assistance team that is working to help the city recover from losses that incurred from the storm. And they're also working with the external resources to be able to help our citizens get back to a quality of life and recover from this storm as well. So I think the city is doing a great job with the leadership team and getting out there and trying to get through this recovery process as quickly as possible. But it's a disaster, and it's a pretty significant one, so it's going to take some time. So.
Well, thank you so much
Well,
for all of that information. Very useful information. Donnie Daniels from our City of Rocky Mount Fire Department. Coming up in just a few minutes, I told you we'd have a representative from the U.S. Small Business Administration, so she's going to give you details about how you can receive assistance as well. So stay tuned. Very important information coming up right here on City Beat.
94 civic leaders, politicians, educators, doctors, scientists, musicians, and sportsmen have all been inducted into the Twin Counties Hall of Fame. Come see them all at the train station.
Hello and welcome back to City Beat. I'm your host, Tamika Keenan Norman. And if you're just tuning into today's show, a special thanks to Donnie Daniels from the City of Rocky Mount Fire Department. We're talking disaster recovery efforts following Hurricane Matthew, and he had some very important information to share with us. If you didn't catch the show in its entirety, you can always visit our website at rockymountnc.gov to check it out as well. So joining me today, we've got Shakiva Jones from the U.S. Small Business Administration to talk about how they can provide assistance as well. So welcome to City Beat.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, Shakiva, I did pronounce that
Yes,
correctly,
that's
right? Okay. So SBA, tell me how they can assist folks who've lost their homes or incurred damage.
Well, people who are in declared disaster areas, such as Edgecombe County, can come out to a DRC, a Disaster Recovery Center, and fill in the application.
Okay, and Disaster Recovery Center, for folks who don't know, is located in the education building of the Imperial Center for the Arts and Sciences. So do you know how long folks can come out there?
Yes, our deadline is December 9th. We also have a few other areas to come to, one in the Imperial Center as well, but there's one in Tarboro, if that might be closer, at the Riverside Plaza.
Okay, thank you for that. So tell me a little bit about some of the loans that you all provide, interest rates, all that good stuff.
Well, we have loans for renters, homeowners, and businesses. Homeowners can get up to $200,000 at as low as 1.5%. Renters can get up to $40,000 as low as 1.5% as well. And businesses can get up to $2 million for as low as 4%.
Okay, so folks who, you're at your lowest when you've lost your home.
Right.
So what type of criteria are you looking at for folks to qualify for these loans?
Well, we definitely look at credit, we look at income, and we look at collateral, your ability to repay. But collateral won't be a deterrent, or it won't deter you from getting a loan. If you don't have the collateral, SBA will still work with you. But we definitely look at income and your ability to repay.
Okay, and what's the period of time for repayment typically?
Well, SBA has really great loans and really great term limits, so up to 30 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you can get a loan up to 30 years.
Okay.
If you borrowed $200,000 for your home because it was damaged, you have up to 30. They can give you a loan term up to 30 years to repay it.
Okay. So how long do folks have to apply for that loan?
That is great. December 9th is the deadline.
Okay.
And it is best to get in early because you need to get in now to do the loan paperwork because an inspector has to come out. And you don't want to wait to the last minute because there might not be an extension after December 9th.
Okay. So what other services can folks receive at that Disaster Recovery Center as well?
Well, it's a FEMA Disaster Recovery Center. So when you come in, you'll get a FEMA registration number. And then you'll go through the FEMA process applying for their programs. And then if you're referred to SBA, you'll come and sit with somebody at the Small Business Administration. But you can also talk to somebody from the state and talk about mitigation. SBA does offer loans for mitigation to deter this from happening to your home again, because I hear a lot of people say they had the same issue with Hurricane Floyd. So if you get an SBA loan and you want to mitigate your house, you get up to 20% of your loan, and you can do something like maybe elevate something of your house, or you can get a safe room or something like that. Something to just make you feel a little safer and more secure the next time a disaster happens.
Okay. So now, do you have to report to the Recovery Center to apply for these loans? Can you do it online?
Yes, you can. You don't have to come to the Disaster Recovery Center, but it's helpful because somebody from SBA is there to help you and to go through the application process with you. But if you don't want to come out or you can't come out, you can also go to www.sba.gov, or you can call out 1-800 number, 1-800-659-2995, and somebody will mail an application out to you.
Now, how long does it take to get feedback to find out whether or not you received that loan?
They're trying to expedite the process now because, like you said, we need help in North Carolina. So a lot of it depends on how long it takes you to submit your application, to get the required documents in, like tax forms, and then the inspector has to come out. So we try to get it in under 3 weeks, but it all depends on the applicant.
Okay. And have you all had a lot of folks come out to the DRC or apply for loans at this point?
Yes, we've loaned over $8 million at this point. So a lot of people are coming out, especially here in Edgecombe County. A lot of people are coming out and applying because they realize that the SBA is a great program with great interest rates, great loan terms, and this is a great opportunity to help rebuild. A lot of people want to stay here and they don't want to move. And if they need help and they don't have other resources, SBA is a great opportunity to rebuild.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. Anything that I missed that you want to tell folks?
Yes, apply. We are here until December 9th. There are 3 ways to apply. You can go online, you can come to Disaster Recovery Center, or you can call our 1-800 number, 1-800-659-2995, and apply. If you don't apply, it's basically saying you don't need extra help. You don't need the money. And the government is definitely here to help. We have the resources available, and we want to help people in North Carolina recover.
Okay. And give us that website one more time.
www.sba.gov.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and thanks for being in the community as well. I know you're based in Georgia, so
Yes.
thanks for being here too.
I'm here in North Carolina for as long as North Carolina needs me to be here.
All right. Well, Shakiva Jones, Public Affairs Specialist with the U.S. Small Business Administration. I'm Tamika Norman. Thanks so much for tuning in to this edition of City Beat. Please spread the word to everyone about how they can receive assistance for disaster recovery. And if you need additional information, you can also visit our website at rockymountnc.gov. Thanks for tuning in to another edition of City Beat.